This is an introduction to Flask IPFilter. Flask IPFilter is a simple Flask extension that allows you to limit access to your Flask-based website based on the source IP address. That is, who's requesting access to the website. This is just a demo and introduction, but to go from the beginning, we'll start out with Python. Python is a popular programming language, especially right now in data science and web application development. If you want a copy of Python for free, you can go to www.python.org, and under Downloads here, you can choose your platform. I won't walk you through how to install that, but you can find some great tutorials at realpython.com. You see they also have a tutorial for pipenv, which is a package manager I'll be using that you might be interested in. And then Flask itself is a web application framework within Python that allows you to develop dynamic websites. And you can see here that a basic website is very simple to set up. You import these modules from Flask, you create the Flask application instance, and then you define a function that will respond to a particular URL. And then this line right here is called a decorator. That's what ties that function to the Flask application and makes it all work. Running it in a development environment is very simple. You just execute Flask run. So I'm going to just go ahead and get started. Right now I have a new project demo folder. All I have in it is app.py, which is what I took from this Hello World app from Flask. And you can see there we've just got a basic 5-6 line web application. Right now this is not ready to run. We need to actually go ahead and install some modules. I'll show you how to do that. So let's use pipenv, and I'm just going to type pipenv install Flask. And what this will do, as opposed to the more traditional pip, is this will go ahead and create a virtual environment for us. You can see it's putting that in my home directory. It's installing Flask, and it's installing all of Flask's dependencies. It's also created these two new files, pipfile and pipfile.lock, that keep track of the requirements I've installed and the dependencies for those and the particular versions that they require, so that nothing gets changed if we were to rerun this command later after some dependency had been updated on the Python package index. So I'm going to go ahead and type pipenv shell, and this will bring me into a shell that has my virtual Python environment all set up. You can see if I type which Python, I will be working in my local version of Python, not the system-wide Python. Similarly, which pip will give me my local version of pip, and if I list the packages that I've installed, you can see that I've installed Flask as well as all of its dependencies here. To actually go ahead and run this application now, we can just type Flask run, and you can see we're running a development server. We're running on this local machine, and if I go over here in the browser, we can actually pull up Hello World, and you can see on the log that that has loaded. So we'll kill this for a minute. I'm going to now secure this with Flask IPFilter. And actually, before I do that, I need to install Flask IPFilter. So we'll do that with pipenv as well. Pipenv install Flask IPFilter. We could have done that from the beginning, since Flask IPFilter depends on Flask. But in pipenv, you probably want Flask as one of your main dependencies, so that if you stop using Flask IPFilter and remove it, other things don't get deleted as well. So now we will go back and edit this application. And you can see in the Flask IPFilter documentation up here at Read the Docs that we also have a simple quick start. And I'll show you how to just add that to your application. So from Flask IPFilter, import two classes, and that is the IPFilter itself and the whitelist rule set. We'll talk more about rule sets in the coming videos. After we initialize our app, we'll go ahead and initialize the actual IPFilter. This set of double parentheses is very important. That makes sure you're creating a new whitelist rather than referring to the whitelist class in general. And on the quick start, you can see that I've permitted localhost, but I won't do that just yet, so you can see what this does. We'll go ahead and run this again. And now when I go back here, I am getting a message that says this is forbidden because I have not yet authorized my own IP address to view that. We'll go up here, and again, using the Flask IPFilter documentation, you can see the way to permit an IP address there is to permit it at the filter level. So we will tell the IPFilter rule set to permit my local IP address 127.0.0.1. We'll go ahead and run that again. And this time everything works. In the coming videos, I'll show you some more rule sets. I'll show you how we can integrate this with your own function for deciding whether an IP address should be permitted, and we'll look at how we can do some logging and potentially integration with other systems.